قدمت لحياتي، فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي، فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. صدق الله العلي العظيم. الفاتحة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. We would like to express our condolences over the martyrdom of Imam Muhammad Al-Baqir alayhi salam to all of you and Imam Zamana alayhi salatu wassalam. Salawat. I would like to request Shafiq Huda to please come to the stage and then give us some details about the life of Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam and the circumstances under which his martyrdom happened, and all the work that he has done to spread the knowledge of Ahl Bayt alayhi salam. And along with that, can I please request you to touch upon the circumstances in the life of Sahabi Rasul Hazrat Abu Zar Ghafari Raziyallahu Ta'ala anhu. Salawat.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين خالق السماوات والأرض، إلها واحدا أحدا صمدا لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين رحمة للعالمين طه وياسين بالقاسم محمد صلى الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين، ورحمة الله على محبيهم ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وقاتليهم وغاصب حقوق حقهم ومنكر فضائلهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتبارك في كتابه الحكيم وفرقانه المجيد وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي زدني علما. صلوات على محمد وعلى محمد. Respected sisters and brothers, my youngsters, my elders, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا Imam Muhammad ibn Ali Al-Baqir lil-Nabiyyin alayhi salatu wassalam. I begin by extending condolences to Imam Sahib al-Amr, to the Holy Prophet's family, to all the believers around the world, and the sisters and brothers of Al-Mahdi Al-Muntadhar Center here in London, extending condolences as we mark the Shahadat, the martyrdom anniversary of Imam Muhammad ibn Ali Al-Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam. There are a number of unique factors in the life of Imam Al-Baqir alayhi salam that I'm sure that most of you have heard, but I'm just giving a reminder to myself and to my youngsters, inshallah. This was an Imam and an Imam time where there was a lot of changes happening in the Muslim world. And some of these changes were very profound changes that required somebody at the caliber, the status and stature of Imam al-Baqir to be able to address. Every Imam, if you will read the biographies, had a unique situation and unique circumstances in each of their respective times. One of the things that had happened, and this is why I selected the verse of the Holy Quran, whereby we are asking Allah, Rabbi zidni ilman. Oh Allah, oh my Lord, increase my knowledge. This is a verse of the Holy Quran that we can actually recite in Qunut as well. And one of the few short ayats of the Holy Quran that we can expect our youngsters to memorize very early on. Rabbi zidni ilman. Oh my Allah, oh my Lord, increase me in knowledge. Knowledge has been something that has been so critical, so vital, so important, that every Imam emphasized it, the Holy Prophet in his own time emphasized it, and to the extent whereby Kitabul Ilm is one of the books in the early part of Sheikh Kulaini's Al-Kafi series, Usul Kafi, whereby he quotes one hadith from Imam Jafar ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, whereby the Imam says that you are either a teacher, you are either teaching, you are learning, or you are rubbish. This is a hadith from Imam Ma'asum, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, that has been narrated by Sheikh Kulaini. Allah Makam. And then he says, the Imam has been quoted as saying that to seek knowledge, to learn for 1 hour, that means you come to a majlis, you come to a gathering, you come to a place where there is learning taking place. That 1 hour in learning is greater than 60 years of ibadat, 60 years of you praying, fasting, reciting Quran. 60 years of that is on one side, and 1 hour of learning whereby you increase your knowledge is on the other side. Imagine the greatness, the importance that we have been given of learning. The Prophet has been quoted as saying, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, "Utlubul ilma faridatan ala kulli muslimina wal muslimat." To seek knowledge is compulsory on every male and female. And see, you imagine here, the Prophet of Islam went out of his way to emphasize that learning is wajib, compulsory, an obligation on males and females. He didn't differentiate, he didn't discriminate. He made it compulsory on every gender, both genders. And when we look at some of the world's ideologies today, something becomes very clear. I hope you will remember my conversation of last week, inshallah, whereby I mentioned that we are, mashallah, grateful to Allah for making us followers of the wilayat of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli. By following the wilayat of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, we have got a certain understanding and appreciation of the world that others may or may not have. The importance of knowledge, and I've only given you a few hadith. The rest is your homework to go and seek out how important the seeking of knowledge is. That utlubul ilma min al-mahd al-lahd. Seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. In fact, one time, and I'm just sharing this because it's very relevant to our discussion. When the Prophet of Islam was once talking to his ashab, to his companions, And he said to them that if you had 24 hours to live, what would you do? What should you do? What would you do? One of them said, oh, I would pray. I would do my salah for 24 hours. Okay. Somebody said, I would fast. Another one said, I would recite Quran. For the entire time that I was told that tomorrow at this time, Malakul Maut, the angel of death, at 7:35 will come to me. I will pray Quran till that time. Somebody else said that, oh, I will go and apologize to people I may have hurt. Somebody else said to the Prophet that, I'll go and return all the money that I borrowed from people and all that. And the Prophet said, all these are good. All of these are good deeds. All these are, worthy of mention. But do you want more thawab? Do you want more ajr? Do you want more reward? They said, Ya Rasulullah, what should we do? The Prophet said, learn something. Ajib. The Prophet said, learn something that you didn't know. So that means that even if you were to die in that 24-hour period, the Prophet emphasized learning something that we did not know before, even if you're going to leave the world. So imagine the importance of knowledge, of ilm, how much the Prophet emphasized, how much the Ahlul Bayt emphasized. And so when we look at the life of Imam Al-Baqir al-Islam, one of the titles of the Imam is Al-Baqir. What does Baqir mean? If you can imagine a stream, a river, and then each of that stream has got different sides to that river. So the streams flow out, and they, basically are providing irrigation and water to a lot of other things aside from the main course of that stream. That is what Baqir means. That a stream that has got a lot of things. And that is why between him and his son, Imam Jafar ibn Muhammad al-Sadiq, we find that the Academy of Medina that they had founded, Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq, they used to teach more than 4,000 students, and more than 600 different sciences were taught by Imam Ma'asum alayhi salatu wasalam. Find a university in the world that can claim to teach hundreds of subjects, thousands of students, by none other than two professors, Imam Ma'asum al-Baqir and Imam Ma'asum al-Sadiq alayhim as-salam, peace be upon them. Allahu Akbar. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali. That was how critical knowledge was to the Imam. Imam Baqir alayhi salam has got a number of unique facts. In schools, colleges, universities, now they try to convey messages. They try to convey knowledge in what they call fun facts, little tidbits of information. So I'll share a few fun facts with you today, inshallah, in our discussion. Sounds good with everybody, inshallah? Bi-idhnillah ilahi. May Allah give us the ability to, inshallah, preach it. Imam Baqir alayhi salam was the 5th Imam of the Ahlul Bayt, the 5th Imam after the Holy Prophet. And it was narrated by the Holy Prophet that when one of his close companions, Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari, asked him that, Ya Rasulullah, who are your legitimate successors? The Prophet narrated to him, confided to him, and he said, Jabir, there is, Ali after me. Then he talks about Imam Hassan. He named Imam Hussein. He says Ali ibn al-Hussein, Zain al-Abidin, then Muhammad. When he came to Muhammad ibn Ali al-Baqir, the Prophet told Jabir, you will be alive at the time of my great-grandson Muhammad ibn Ali. His name will be Muhammad ibn Ali, his title will be, his name will be my name. His fragrance will be my fragrance. His job will be my job, to spread knowledge throughout the earth. When you reach the era of his time, you will see him, you will be blind, but you will know about him. Convey my salutations to him, convey my salam to him. And then the Prophet went on and named everyone else up until Imam al-Hujjah alayhi salatu wassalam. So one time when Jabir had become blind, as I said, at the time of Imam Baqir, and he heard some footsteps one day when he was near the Masjid al-Nabawi. He heard some footsteps. He says, these footsteps are very familiar. When the Imam passed by, the fragrance was what Jabir remembered was the fragrance of none other than Rasulullah. And he says to him, Assalamu alayka, yabna Rasulullah, O grandson of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon you, salutation. The Imam immediately responded, and he says, Anta Muhammad? The Imam replied, yes, na'am, ana Muhammad. He says, are you Ibn Ali, the son of Ali? He says, yes. He says, are you known as Baqir? And the Imam replies, yes. He says, your grandfather Rasulullah has conveyed salutations to you, salams to you. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So you can imagine the grandeur of Hazrat Jabir as well. You know, and this is the same Jabir who was the first Zawar of Karbala. The first Zair, the first pilgrim to Karbala Mu'alla after the Shahadat of Abu Abdullah. So Imam Baqir is the fifth Imam, as I mentioned. You're all with me. When you look at the list of the Ma'asumeen, the infallibles, he is number 7. So you have Rasulullah first, Siddiqa Fatima Zahra Salamullah alayha second, and then each of the Imams after that. So he is the 7th Ma'asum, or the 7th infallible, 5th Imam. His year of birth is 57 Hijrah. 5th Imam, 7th Ma'asum. 57 Hijrah was his date of birth. His year of birth, sorry. His year of Shahadat was 114. So you double it, he was 57 years of age, born in 57 Hijri, you double that or you add the two together, you get 114, the year of his Shahadat. Salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, please. Another distinct feature of the holy Imam, of the blessed Imam, he is the only Imam that is Fatimi from both his mother's side and his father's side. His mother is Fatima bint Imam Hassan alayhi salam. His father Ali ibn al-Husayn alayhi salam. So Fatimi Imam from both of his parents' side. And so he was at a time where there was a very interesting thing happening in the Muslim world. And as I said, it was a challenge on his shoulders whereby the Imam had to address a number of issues. As I mentioned, a knowledgeable Imam, Baqir, one who spreads knowledge. He had already been told that his job will be the same as Rasulullah, to spread knowledge. And I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. So when the Imam was living his Imamat, you will find that the Imam was facing a number of interesting situations. By this time, the Muslim world had reached almost the Mongolian on the borders on the east side and Andalusia on the west side. As a result of Bani Umayyah's conquest, they had a severely large, basically the largest empire at its time. Money coming in left, right, and center. Oppression also left, right, and center. But the Imam was now facing one interesting dilemma, whereby there was a lot of, because the Muslim empire had reached so far, there was a lot of Greek literature coming in, Greek philosophies coming in, Roman thoughts coming in, India's thoughts from the Mushrikeen coming in, the Persian prior to the Islamic advent thoughts coming in. So you had a lot of different ideologies coming into the Muslim world, being translated into Arabic, and scholars having discussions with Muslims, scholars of the Greek background, Roman background, Indian background, Persian background, and various other European entities coming and having discussions. Very similar to what we are facing today, whereby the universities, the academia, the colleges and universities have got a lot of debates happening online. Now, we've got this I don't know if I should call it a convenience, a blessing, or a curse. It depends on how you look at it. There is so much emphasis and so much usage of artificial intelligence, AI, that the AI is now almost replacing real intelligence. This artificial intelligence is replacing real intelligence. You ask a youngster to calculate 9 times 6, they'll have to pull out a phone, or they'll have to do something or another to pull out a utensil that they'll be able to calculate 9 times 6 or 7 times 8 or whatever you want to calculate. I remember my grandfather's era, they were able to do multiplications, divisions, additions, subtractions, even 3 or 4 digits long in their own minds, and within a few minutes, even in some cases a few seconds, they'll be able to give you the calculation almost 100% accurate. Now, we can't even do basics. This is something that we need to really put our minds and say that, okay, is this a blessing? Is it a curse? Are we over dependent? Is it something that's benefiting us? Because by the same token that I talk about the importance of knowledge, and Islam has told us to seek knowledge on any subject, on anything and everything that is around us that will benefit us. But if you remember the ta'qibat of Salatul Asr, we're also reminded of seeking refuge from Allah, with Allah, from something else as well. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min nafsin la tashba' wa min qalbin la yaksha. You remember the ta'qibat of Salatul Asr? I'm sure all of you have recited it. What is the next one that comes in there? Wa min ilmin la yanfa'. Wa min ilmin la yanfa'. Oh Allah, protect me from the knowledge that does not benefit me. And in fact, the Mufassirin, the commentators of the Holy Quran have said that knowledge is important. Knowledge is critical. Knowledge is vital. You heard about the hadith of that. But if you look at one thing, to seek knowledge is very easy. You can go to school, you can go to university, you can go to college and you'll get knowledge. Is there something more important or more vital than knowledge? We are told yes. Something called hikmah. Hikmah gets translated as wisdom. So knowledge is very easy to obtain and to ascertain. But hikmah is more challenging and more important. Because anybody can have knowledge, but it takes a special someone who has been gifted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have wisdom. And if you look at the Quran Majid, you see the recollection and reference of somebody who was very wise, whose name was Luqman. A surah of the Holy Quran is named after him. And he is referred to as Luqman Hakim. Some narrations actually say that when he was younger, Luqman, African-American, Habashi, from what is present-day Ethiopia, was once asked by an angel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent an angel to him. He says, go ask him a question. The question was, well, Luqman, do you want to be a Nabi or do you want to be a Hakim, a wise man? Luqman's beautiful answer was, whatever the decree of Allah is, I will surrender before it. Whatever the order of Allah is, I'll surrender. But if I have a choice, I would rather be Hakim. Allahu Akbar. And that is why you see lots and lots of advices of Luqman to his son and to others. And the Quran narrates many of these advices. And so more important than just knowledge is to be a Hakim, to have wisdom. And when wisdom is complemented with knowledge, that is when we are striving towards reaching nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So knowledge in itself sometimes might get us away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمِنْ عِلْمٍ لَا يَنْفَى. Oh Allah, keep me away from knowledge that does not benefit me, that might end up harming me, that won't get me closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you look at what's around us today, knowledge is of so many different strands and ways and subjects. And some of this knowledge does what? You find that knowledge can go on to the creation of an atomic bomb, a nuclear bomb. Knowledge used in the wrong way can cause destruction, mass destruction. And when it's used in the right way, when the same nuclear knowledge is used in the right way, it can help in solving or treating cancer, in help in curing with the use of isotopes and all the advances. And that's why you see today many of the countries in the Western world, and I'm not saying this cynically, I'm not saying this with animosity, I am saying this from a very practical, realistic point of view, that many of the researchers and scientists in European and Western countries really don't want to find a cure for cancer, because these billions and billions of dollars that are spent in research and funding these doctors and researchers and scientists will all be finished if there's a cure. Remember that. And if you go to the Middle East and you find a country that is dedicated to Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, the Islamic Republic of Iran, you'll see phenomenal advancements in isotope research, in nuclear medicine, and powering the country through nuclear, which is one of the most environmentally friendly ways of powering a country. You'll see that advancement there. So much so that people throughout the Middle East and even in Africa, many of my friends will go to Iran for treatment because they know that the treatment there will be genuine, will be legitimate, and will be much more advanced than other countries that waste their money for destructive nuclear issues rather than trying to solve the problem. And that's one of the reasons why these Western countries, including the superpower south of us, doesn't want nuclear energy, nuclear use of the sciences by Iran for that reason, because their doorsteps, their shops will be closed because the advancement is being made. Salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. This has been the gift of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad and those who follow Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Why did the Prophet go out of his way to say that utlubul ilma faridatan ala kulli muslimina wal muslimat? If you look at the hadith and the translation, obligation of knowledge, seeking knowledge is an obligation on every male and female. The Prophet went out of his way to make sure he mentions females. Ya Rasulullah, why? Maybe, perhaps, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was looking at another era whereby there will be some Muslims or those who are claiming to be Muslims who will go by different names. The Taliban, the Daesh, the Wahhabis, the Takfiris, the Salafis, and they'll say, no, women cannot learn, women cannot have education, women must stay at home, women cannot drive, women cannot do this, women cannot go to college, women cannot go to university. And they will shut every door possible whereby the Prophet and Ali Muhammad and the Prophet's family had mentioned that it is an obligation even on the women. And that is why today you find, if you look at the entire West Asian area, East Asian area, and the statistics that are there, Iran, a follower of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, whose whole foundation is based on Imam al-Zamana, Ajjallahu ta'ala Dhuhuru Sharif, has the highest proportion of women PhDs of any one of these countries and one of the leading contenders of high education for women, for females in the entire world today. Why? Because this is the message of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what we have taken. And that's why I mentioned last week that we need to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have been guided on this message where we have the purity, the sublimity of the message of truth and uniqueness. And that closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because knowledge in itself can be destructive. وَمِنْ عِلْمٍ لَا يَنْفَعُ. Ya Allah, we don't want knowledge that doesn't benefit us. We want knowledge on any subject that will bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that will bring us near to Allah. And that is why in Imam Al-Baqir's time, all of these ideologies coming created another dilemma. And I was talking about AI and artificial intelligence. Today, with your phone, with your tablet, with your tools, at your desk, you know exactly what is happening anywhere and everywhere else in the world. Discussions take place, especially in Ramadan, in Dhul Hijjah, and in Arba'in time. And a lot of issues of Aqidah are being debated. And I get youngsters coming and saying, why do we believe this? Why do we have this? Why does our Aqidah say this? Why do we pray Salat like this? Why do we do wudu like this? Why do we break our fast at Maghrib rather than sunset? All these discussions come about. The answers are there because this is not something new. In the time of Imam Al-Baqir, some similar situations were taking place when all this literature was coming. All of the Romans and the Greek mythologies were coming in. People were having questions, and many people's iman was becoming shaky, was becoming confused. What is right, what is wrong? Whether Tawheed is really the be-all and end-all, or whether we can, accept, for example, the Hindu mentality that, there are multiple gods who are responsible for different things. And so when these things were being debated and discussed because they were being translated, and one of the things that, again, if you look at history carefully and do an analytical review, you will almost have a question that why were Bani Umayyah so keen, and Banu Abbas had continued this trend as well, to translate a lot of these literatures into Arabic. Was it genuinely to increase the knowledge, or was it to create confusion in the taqwa and the iman of the people? This is something that history is there. I don't have an answer of right or wrong, or yes or no, or this or that. History can be debated. Issues of fiqh cannot be debated. Whatever Allah Ta'ala has said, those are issues of fiqh and usul, no discussion. But when it comes to history, tariq, and analysis, we can have our own views, and we can have our own conclusions, and we can debate it and discuss it, that what was the real reason why they were doing this? Because a population that is not educated in the righteousness of their own foundations is easy to control. If you look at many of the Arab nations today, they are fed well, they're clothed well, their education is free, their medical is free, for the citizens I'm talking about. And so they were quiet. They are like sheep. They will just obey and do whatever they are told. They will have no discussion. They will not oppose or contest what the rulers and leaders are doing. They're blind sheep. Islam has reminded us that we need to have discussions. And we need to have, as long as those discussions are foundly rooted on the truth and on haqq. And so the knowledge and the wisdom that we want is the correct knowledge and wisdom. So one of the other things that the Imam was facing was interesting. I will mention that the Imam had two approaches. The Imam used to give phenomenal amounts of charity, sadaqah. But even in the sadaqah, the Imam used to prefer some over others. What do I mean by that? If, for example, a talib ilm came, a student of knowledge, a student who was in the hawza, for example, the Imam would give him X amount of dirhams or dinars. If another person, similar situation came, the Imam would give slightly less. One of the companions asked him, Yabna Rasulullah, there was two people, both are mustahaq, both are in a similar situation. To the talib ilm, you gave a little more, to the other one, you gave a little less. Why? The Imam says, do you know when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the ajr and the status of giving sadaqah, there is a much greater status to give to a poor talib ilm, a knowledgeable person, than to give to a jahil person. There's much more. And whether, sometimes the hadith mentioned 7 times 70, 700, 7,000, that is, open to, again, subjectivity depending on how much thawab or ajr you want to talk about. But the Imam did. So on the one hand, the Imam made a lot of emphasis and made sure that those who were seeking knowledge, those who were talib ilm, those who were ulama, were given a better stipend than an ordinary person. And then the Imam also had to confront, and very severely, people who pretended to be ulama, who came in the libas, in the dress of the ulama, who were actually bent on misguiding people. There's an interesting episode when I was doing my studies, my Islamic studies. One of the stories they narrated was in the time of Marhum Ayatollah Burujardi, Sayyid Muhammad Hussain Burujardi, one of the leading Maraja in the 60s. He was once approached. He says that, Mawla, Agha, one of the talib ilm, one of the students of the hawza, he stole something. Talib ilm ne chori ki. Just in Urdu, this was how it was explained to me. So a student of religion, a student of hawza, he stole something. Immediately, Ayatollah Burujardi, Allah Makam, rectified that statement. He says, don't say that a talib ilm, a student of hawza stole. Say that a thief who was wearing the cloth of a talib ilm stole. ये मत कहो कि तालिब इल्म ने चोरी की, एक चोर तालिब इल्म के लिबास में चोरी की. There's a big difference between the two. There's a deep philosophical, fundamental difference. There will be a lot of people who will put on a turban and wear an abba and all this, and they'll come and they'll say, oh, I'm Maulana, I'm Sheikh, I'm Sayyid, I am this, I am that. And they'll start giving their fatwas, they'll start giving their nasiyat. Imam Baqir was confronted by this type of situation. Something called qiyas was becoming very paramount in the era of the Imam. This qiyas means that you don't go into any philosophical research. You just think, I think this is wajib, this is wajib. I think this is haram, so this becomes haram. And there was somebody who was known as an Imam, Imam Azam, and the Imam Baqir alayhi salam, Imam Ma'asum, said that, this has to be stopped, this has to be cut in the bud. What does the Imam calls him and talks to him and says, I understand you are giving your fatwas based on your own thoughts. He says, yes, if I think something right, because Islam is logic, right? I often hear people say this numerous times. Islam is logic. Brother Shafiq, don't you understand? Islam is a religion of logic. And I will say, yes, you're right. But whose logic? if we were to take a logical discussion here, amongst all of you respected sisters and brothers who are here, my youngsters, my elders, many of you are university students or will be, or college students or will be, high school students or will be, many of you are graduates. Everyone sitting here will have their own definition of logic. What is mantiq? You will have your own concepts of what is logical and what is not. Am I correct, or have I confused anybody yet? So here, Jazakallah khair, shukriya. And so basically, this was a problem that was happening, that everybody was using their own thoughts, especially those who were coming in the libas, in the cloth of ulama, of scholars, and giving their own fatwas, rightly or wrongly. They would not go to the imam. They would just think of themselves and basically make their own interpretations of Sharia. And this is a danger we have. That is why the Prophet says, even to interpret one ayah of the Quran Majid according to your own wishes, you have set yourself a place in the fire of Jahannam. We're not even talking about philosophy. We're not even talking about fiqh. We're not talking about usul. We're talking about just an ayat of the Quran, even a simple ayah. Don't interpret it according to your own wishes. See what the Mufassirin have said. See what the Ahlul Bayt have said. So the Imam calls one of these characters and has an interesting, lengthy discussion. I'm not going to go into the details of the discussion. I'm just going to take a couple of points from that discussion, just to give an idea of how the Imam, on the one hand, talked about knowledge, taught thousands of students, and on the other hand, confronted this type of misguidance head on. He calls this person and he says, you're doing your own ijtihad without using the foundations of ijtihad. He says, yeah. The Imam asks him a number of questions. He says, in your logic, is killing a greater sin or adultery? Zina or qatl? And he says, Yabna Rasul. Well, he didn't say Yabna Rasul. He says, they all respected the Imam as grandsons of the Holy Prophet. So they didn't believe in him to be Imam. They said Yabna Rasul. They would say Yabna Rasul. He said, Yabna Rasul, of course, killing is a grave sin. Much more than anything else. That's the ultimate. Then the Imam asks him, your logic is telling you killing is more than zina, than adultery. He says, of course. That's what your logic is telling you. He says, yes. He says, then why is it that for a murder you need 2 witnesses and for zina you need 4 witnesses? Where's the logic? Then the Imam says to him that who is stronger? And I'm not saying this in any demeaning way. He says, who is stronger, a female or a male? And the other Imam replied, of course, the males are the stronger gender. He says, so then your logic is saying that the women are the weaker gender. That other one says, yes. He says, then why did Allah say that half of the inheritance goes to the lady and double of that share goes to the male? If your logic is saying that they need more because they're weaker, they should get double. Why not? So, your logic is wrong. Then he goes on to say, is salah more important or saum? Namaz ya roza? He says, Yabna Rasulullah, of course, salat is much more important. Salat umudidi, this is the pillar of religion. Everybody has talked about the importance of salah, of prayers. Then the Imam asks him, your logic is saying that prayers is more important than fasting, right? He says, yes, of course. He says, well, why is it then in the monthly cycle of a lady, salah doesn't have to be made up, but saum does? The fasting has to be made up. Your logic is telling you one thing. The Sharia of Allah is telling you something else. And there was another discussion about, whether semen was more najas than urine. He says, no, urine is more. The Imam says, why is it that for urine, you need to only just wash, and for when semen passes, you have to take a whole ghusl? Then your logic is faulty. Then the Imam goes on to explain the philosophy of each of these items. He says, yes, qatl is worse. But in qatl, when somebody has killed somebody, there's one mujrim, there's one sinner. And so you need 2 witnesses. When there is zina, there are 2 sinners. So you need 2 witnesses for each. That means a total of 4. He says that yes, women are given half the inheritance. But remember, when she gets something, when the lady gets something, the sister gets something, she has no obligation. But when the male gets it, he has to look after his family. That's his wajibat. He has to look after his surviving parent. He has to look after his own children. He has to look after various other instances where he is called upon to spend that money. Whereas a lady has no obligation, no responsibilities whatsoever. He said that, you're right, salat is more important than Saum. But if a lady had to do her salah, qada, then in those 7 to 10 days, there would be a whole pile up of salat. It would be impossible to make it up, especially every month. Fasting, it's only 7 or 8 or 9 days. In 1 year, you can make it up without any difficulty. So the Imam was on to go on to explain that if Allah would have made a ghusl wajib every time he had to go urinate, every time he had to go pee, as opposed to the other ghusl, then some people, if they have any difficulties or issues, they would be spending their whole time in the shower. They'd never be able to get out of the shower. People have to, if they have issues or problems. So the Imam said, don't use your logic. Your logic will be flawed. Listen to what the logic of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and that is what will get you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat ala Muhammad and ala Muhammad. So the Imam was faced with all these difficulties and challenges. And this is where the Imam's own patience and his own tranquility was instrumental in conveying the message, number one, laying the foundation for Imam Sadiq to take it to a different level, to a much higher level. A lot of times people think that the 5th Imam and 6th Imam's time was easy. It's not an easy time. It was a relatively more, I can say, comfortable time only because the two powers of the time, Banu Umayyah and Banu Abbas, were fighting for power at the time. So it was basically an opportunity for the Imam to convey the message of the Prophet, convey the real Sharia of Islam to the near ones and dear ones and the followers. And that is why in the teachings of the Imam, in the classes of the Imam, not only, forget about Shias, not only Muslims were attending, even non-Muslims used to attend the classes of Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. They would be learning from the sciences. And that is why if today you look at many of the early philosophers, thinkers, scientists, doctors, and all the experts who were there after the time of Imam Sadiq and Imam Baqir, they went on to be researchers and dynamics in their own fields, and they would always mention in their writings that I was a student of Imam Sadiq or I was a student of Imam Baqir alayhi salam. And even non-Muslims have compiled various treatises and manifests of the teachings and the writings of Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq. Until today, these are instrumentals used for when you're looking at the original sources of science. You will find the names of Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Even by Europeans, who by that time, this was the golden era of Muslims. The Europeans were still in what was called the Dark Ages. When the Renaissance era and period was coming, this was something that they were able to benefit from, the teachings of these two noble Imams. Imam Baqir had laid that foundation. And as our respected brother mentioned, had asked that when we had, the companions, there was no shortage of dhulm and oppression. Similar to what we see on the followers of Ahlul Bayt even today, it was a similar situation for the followers of Ahlul Bayt even in that time. And that is why, there's a beautiful book written by George Jordak, The Voice of Human Justice, Sawt al-Adaliyat al-Insaniya. George Jordak was actually a Lebanese Christian he wrote about the life. It's a biography of Imam Ali, or at least some of the circumstances. And he talks about how much oppression was on those who were following Amir al-Mu'mineen. Even if their name was similar to the names of the Ahlul Bayt, how much they suffered. One of those who had suffered was none other than Abu Dharr Ghifari. Abu Dharr was the one companion for whom the Prophet of Islam had said that the sun has not shone on anybody more honest than Abu Dharr Ghifari. He was exiled by the third Khalifa, and the Banu Umayyah continued this. Abu Dharr, the Prophet had already told him, you have lived your life alone, you will die alone, you will be buried alone. And so one of those noble companions for whom the Prophet had already foreshadowed and foretold his death. In the time of Imam Baqir, these were some of the close-knit companions that the Imam had kept close to them, that the Imam had prayed for. And Amir al-Mu'mineen's own dua was with these noble companions in these early times. So the Imam Baqir's time was very, very instrumental in these things happening. Another thing that had happened, according to a number of historians, was that the coin, the currency used in the time of in the Arabian Peninsula at the time was the Roman currency. And so the Romans had decided that in order to basically humiliate Muslims and all that, they put some derogatory comments on their coins, on their currency against Islam and against specifically Rasulullah. You see, again, when we see people today talking ill of Rasulullah, burning the Quran, these were things that have been inherited from the time in the early period of Islam. This is not something new. We must take a stand, my sisters and brothers. When we see oppression in any point, the same as if we were in the time of the Imams and how the Imams took a stand, we also need to take a stand. What happened in San Diego, have we taken a stand? Have we felt, have we prayed? Have we made sure our voice is heard? What happened in the mosque and in places like in Oshawa, where bear spray was put on the worshippers who came for salah? Are we just staying silent? Does it matter to us? Oh, it's another mosque, it's another masjid, it's not here, it's not in our city. Islam was always emphasizing the universality of its faith and its adherence. When one part of your body gets pained, gets injured, the entire body feels the discomfort, my sisters and brothers. So when the Romans decided to put this derogatory comment, now there was a confusion. What do we do? So whenever there was a confusion, the Khalifa at the time, whoever the zalim, the oppressor was, knew that if we are confused, there is nobody other than Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, the legitimate successors of the Holy Prophet, who would be able to solve our dilemma. They go to the doorstep of Imam Muhammad ibn Ali Al-Baqir. They say, Yabna Rasulullah. All of a sudden now, Yabna Rasulullah. All of a sudden now, they need to try and butter the Imam. Alhamdulillah, no Imam has ever been able to be buttered. No legitimate scholar or marja can be buttered up. So please remember that. Imam says, what is the problem? What is the dilemma? He says, look, they're putting this derogatory comments about Rasulullah, about Islam, about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're confused. What do we do? The Imam gave an interesting theory that I wish the Muslim world today would do the same. The Imam says that it is now time, it is important, it is long overdue, but the Imam didn't say this, I'm saying it, I'm paraphrasing. The Imam says that it is time to mint your own coins. Have your own currency. Backed by gold or whatever the situation is, use your own currency. Don't be dependent on somebody else. And this is something that the whole foundation of the Islamic Republic since the revolution's success has been, that the Muslims need to be independent financially, militarily, economically, politically, in every way possible. Until and unless we have our own currency, we will never taste the beauty and the taste, the lazzat of independence, true independence. It's a reality. Until and unless we leave the greenback, until unless we solve this problem in the dilemma of the pound and the euro, we will never truly taste freedom, my sisters and brothers. If the Muslim Ummah does not wake up, then the same thing that happened at that time came. When Imam Baqir's suggestion was taken and the Muslim world had its own currency, there was a certain degree of freedom that the Imam put out to make sure that that dignity and what the Muslim Ummah deserved was done. Of course, the Imam was shaheed afterwards. There was a brief period where the Imam, a short 2-year period, where sub-rectification took place. Again, like I said, Imam's period was a very turbulent, interesting, and a very unique time. One Khalifa, whose name was Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, was at the helm. And somebody asked one of the Ma'asumeen that so hopefully he will be paradise bound. The Imam says, wait, why? Umar ibn Abdul Aziz he did a number of things. There were 3 things that in particular he did that had been very instrumental in advancing the cause of the Ahlul Bayt. He came to Medina, he met with Imam Muhammad Baqir ﷺ, and he said that I realized what had happened, and some of his close people had advised him against it. He says, I want to return Fadak to you. Fadak, the garden of Fadak that was taken from Hazrat Fatima Zahra, salamu alayha, he returned that to Imam Baqir. And one of the reasons why his close advisors had warned him against it, he said, if you return Fadak to Muhammad ibn Ali al-Baqir, if you return Fadak to him, you will have no choice but to also return the Khilafat to him. Because if Fadak was their haq, so is the Khilafat. Allahu Akbar. The second thing he did was that there was, Allahu Akbar, it's difficult for me to say this, but in the khutbahs, in the Jummah salats, in any of the majlises, Allahu Akbar, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, there was the praising of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there was the blessings on Prophet Muhammad, and the third part of every khutbah, of every majlis, of every gathering, the third part was, Allahu Akbar, cursing Ali ibn Abi Talib. In fact, in the early time of Banu Umayyah, when somebody didn't do it, when one of their khatibs forgot to mention the curse on Imam Ali, all of the majma considered their Jummah to be batil, to be void. Why? Because you didn't curse Ali. Imagine. That was the mentality of the people in the time, in Sham especially. Umar ibn Abdul gave an order to stop that. Praising Allah, sending salutations upon Prophet Muhammad. And then, in fact, when he gave the order to stop this, all of the other khatibs, the Imam Jummahs, they thought this was an error. They thought this was a mistake. Until and unless somebody directly from the Khalifa went and said, no, this is his order. They said, are you sure? 70,000 pulpits for 70 years in the time of Banu Umayyah. This was the norm. This was happening. He stopped that. The third thing he did was that he reinstated the stipends for the not only the Shia, but the Ale Fatima, Ale Rasul as well. As I said, it was a short period. When the Imam was asked, does that mean that he says there's one problem that he had, and that is the reason why he may not be entitled to paradise. And that is what? He says he did not disassociate himself from those who were the oppressors in his own family. One of the criteria of those who are true followers of the Wilayah of Ahlul Bayt, who are true believers in Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, is that not only are they close to the followers and friends of Ali Muhammad, but they distance themselves, they disassociate themselves from the enemies of Ali Muhammad alayhi salam. So because he was one of them, he had no choice but to be of the family. He didn't openly curse them. And that is why even in Ziyarat al-Warith we say what? لَعْنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً قَتَلَتْكَ. May Allah curse the killers of Abu Abdullah. وَلَعْنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً ظَلَمَتْكَ. May Allah curse those who oppressed Ahlul Bayt. وَلَعْنَ اللَّهُ أُمَّةً سَمِعَتْ بِذَلِكَ فَرَضِيَتْ بِهِ. May Allah curse those who heard about it, who knew about it, who came to know about it, who later on found out about it, and they were okay with it. They were indifferent to it. They didn't care about it. They are also cursed. Read the Ziyarat, you'll understand it much better. So it was a very turbulent time, and immediately after Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was gone, right away Fadak was first of all taken away, and everything returned back to what it was before. So you can imagine how challenging of a time Imam Baqir's time was. That while he had an opportunity to teach and to convey and lay the foundation for Imam Sadiq so that we are known as Ja'fari Muslims, following the fiqh that was taught, not introduced by Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq alayhi salam, but just exposed and expounded on by Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Very challenging. This was the same Imam who was present in Karbala. There were 3 Imams in Karbala, although not all, there's only one Imam at a time, but there were 3 Imams or infallibles who were present in Karbala. Of course, Abu Abdullah alayhi salam was there. Imam Zain al-Abidin Ali ibn al-Husayn alayhi salam was there. And the third one was Imam Muhammad ibn Ali Al-Baqir alayhi salam, the young Imam, 4 years of age, who saw the events of Karbala, who went through the walk from Karbala to Kufa to Sham. This was the Imam who was present on the plains of Karbala. Imagine the burden with which the Imam lived his life. But when the historians have written, when Shaykh Mufid narrates how the janazah of the Imam, the poisoning of the Imam took place, and how Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was giving the ghusl to his father, and how the preparations were being made. I am reminded of the Imam's own position when he was in Karbala. With great respect, Imam Jafar Sadiq made sure in the home the ghusl was given to Imam Baqir. With great respect, the Imam put the kafan on his father, Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam, and he was taking his martyred father to Jannat Al-Baqir and making sure that he gets a proper burial, a respectful burial. We have been told, and the narrations are there, that numerous people, both Muslims and non-Muslims, Shias and non-Shias, were participating in the janazah of Imam Muhammad Baqir. Imam Baqir, Ibn Rasulullah, imagine what you had gone through when you saw on the plains of Karbala your grandfather Hussein, who was laying on the plains of Karbala. Nobody was there to bury his body. Nobody was there to give him ghusl. And imagine the wounds that you had, Imam Baqir. Even though you were a young child, you were tortured, you were beaten, you were whipped by Mawla. But imagine the heart of Imam Zainul Abidin, your father, when he was in chains and he saw that the body of his father, Abu Abdullah, was on the burning plains of Karbala. Nobody to give him ghusl, nobody to give a proper burial. For days the burning sun was there. We are told that when the Imam was being taken to Jannatul Baqi, when Imam Baqir was being taken to Jannatul Baqi, some people tried to bring a shade to the Imam so that the heat would not go on the body of the Imam. My salams on Abu Abdullah. The burning sun is on the body of Imam Hussein wal ashab al-Hussein. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Oh Allah, accept this ibadat from us. Ya Allah, those who are ill, grant them shifa kamila from their illnesses. Ya Allah, those who are in debt, help them fulfill their debts. Ya Allah, those who are suffering dhulm, oppression in so many parts of the world, hasten the downfall of the oppressors and grant the mazlumin, the mustazafin, a speedy victory. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, protect our ulama, our maraja, the mujtahideen, the waliya faqih who are serving while the Imam is in occultation. Grant them safety, a long life, and safety with the difficulties that are around them, Ya Allah. We ask you to return our Mawla Imam al-Hujjah to us. Make us amongst the ashab and the ansar of the Imam. Let us see zamana dhuhur with our own eyes. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim. Matami Hussein, Ya 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 Hussein.
अफसोस दुश्मने जान हुए बेवजह सितमगर अफसोस दुश्मने जान हुए बेवजह सितमगर अफसोस हाय दुनिया के लिए दीन से गुजरे बदकार हाय दुनिया के लिए दीन से गुजरे बदकार आपको कत्ल किया जहर खिलाकर अफसोस आपको कत्ल किया जहर खिलाकर अफसोस सादक़े आले मोहम्मद हुए या शाह यतीम सादक़े आले मोहम्मद हुए शाह यतीम आज बिन बाप के हैं हज़रत जाफ़र अफसोस आज बिन बाप के हैं हज़रत जाफ़र अफसोस रंग अंगूर की सब्ज़ी ने नया दिखलाया रंग अंगूर की सब्ज़ी ने नया दिखलाया एक बायक हो गया नीला तने अतहर अफसोस एक बायक हो गया नीला तने अफसोस कुश्ताए ज़हर दगा हज़रत बाखर अफसोस कुश्ताए ज़हर दगा हज़रत बाखर अफसोस दुश्मने जान हुए बेवजह सितमगर अफसोस दुश्मने जान हुए बेवजह सितमगर अफसोस या हुसैन या हुसैन
Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alayka ya Nabi Allah. السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ، السلام علیک یا خیر الخلق اللہ، السلام علیک یا محمد ابن عبداللہ، السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیک یا ابا عبداللہ، السلام علیک یا ابن رسول اللہ، السلام علیک ولی جدک و ابیک، السلام علیک ولی امک و اخیک، السلام علیک علی الائمۃ المعصومین من بنیک، السلام علیک جمیع شہداء کربلا ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیک یا غریب الغرباء، السلام علیک یا معین الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام علیک یا شمس الشموس وانیس النفوس، السلام علیک ایھا المدفون بارض طوس، السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ، السلام علیک یا صاحب العصر والامر والزمان، اللمان 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 من فتنة الزمان، السلام علیک یا شریک القرآن، السلام علیک یا قامی الکفر والطغیان، السلام علیک یا دافع الظلم والعدوان، اجل اللہ تعالی فرجک وسہل اللہ تعالی مخرجک وظہورک وجعلنا اللہ من انصارک و اوانک و شیعتک و موالیک، السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ جمیعاً۔ اللہم کن لولیک الحجت ابن الحسن صلواتک علیہ وعلی آبائہ فی ہذہ الساعہ وفی کل ساعہ ولیاً وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودلیلا وعینا حتی تسکنہ ارضک طوعا وتمتعہ فیہا طویلا برحمتک یا ارحم الراحمین۔ اللہم صلی علی محمد۔ سورۃ الفاتحہ مع الصلوات۔